Okay, excellent. We'll call the meeting to order, 7:02 p.m. Welcome everyone to this regular meeting of the Okemos Board of Education, held in public for the purpose of conducting business of the school board. Secretary Doxy, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, Tom Buffett is absent. Jason Burns.
Here.
Katie Kavanaugh. Andrew Phillips.
Here.
Lainey Schrether.
Here.
Jillian Wynn.
Here.
Naya.
Wonderful. We have 6 present, 1 absent. There'll be 2 opportunities for public comment tonight. Citizens who wish to address agenda or not agenda items will have the opportunity at the beginning of the meeting, as well as near the end of the meeting. In-person individuals who wish to address the board must complete a blue form located near the agendas at the room entrance and presented to the board secretary prior to the agenda item. Virtual participants must submit their name and address through a message in the chat box located in Zoom's meeting controls prior to the start of the agenda item. At the appropriate point in the agenda, the board president will call upon individuals who have submitted a blue card in the chat or a chat message, and that individual's microphone will be unmuted for their comments. First today, this is our second meeting where we're going to do this. We have our mission minute kind of around the pack. If anyone has anything they want to speak about real quick, kind of inform the community or board. Anybody? Oh, Superintendent Hood.
Yeah, so while I was doing a walkthrough last week at OPM, I knew they were celebrating their International Day of Peace and got to see just the that vision and mission in action. And 2 of our students were walking around with Miss Christine, and I asked what they were doing, and they were filming PBIS lessons. So the students themselves were creating a video to teach other kids about hallway behavior and brain breaks and things of that nature. So they got to teach me how to use some of the de-escalation calming strategies. And it was wonderful to see those resources not just be delivered by staff, but by students. So I wanted to put some praise there and to thank the sensory committee at OPM, who was Miss Jamie, Mrs. Christine, and Mrs. Aaron for their work on that. And then those students for including me in the PBIS lesson.
It's wonderful. Thank you. Anyone else have anything? I real quick was just going to mention and kind of give an atta-boy to our athletic training staff. I was at the football game Friday night in East Lansing, and there was a scary moment where one of our students was kind of motionless on the ground and passed out. And the speed at which our coaches and our athletic training staff ran out to this young man was amazing. And the care and the attention to detail. And I should mention too, not just our staff, but the East Lansing athletic training staff, the same thing. And their athletic director. Thankfully, everything looks to be okay from my understanding, but it was a scary moment there for a while. So it just reminded me how much our people care about our kids, and you got to see that in action. So that was inspiring for me. Awesome. All right, we'll go for our next item. Discussion move forward and regarding our yearly audit. Superintendent Hood.
Yeah, so I'm gonna we're gonna pull up a couple chairs and that mic over to the end if we could, Steve, for you, and usually have Liz come up too. Liz, if you want to come up, we'll have you guys. Students, if you want to scooch down just a little bit for me, that'd be great. So we can, and we can grab that. So as we're, so we have our finance director, executive director Lentz here, along with Mr. Steve Piesco, CPA with Manor Costeris. I can never say it right. Costerison. Every year I say it wrong and I practice. So Steve's going to give an overview of our 24-25 audit for our trustees and our community, so we can be really transparent about the financial controls and financial status of the Okemos Public Schools. So with that, we'll turn it over to Steve and Liz for the audit report.
Well, thank you. I guess I got to start out thanking Liz and her team. Excellent job as usual. Audit went very smoothly. As you'll see, it's a very good audit report, one of the best you can receive. So appreciate all your help. And this is the first board meeting that we're doing. So if that tells you anything, it was very clean and went very well. So with that, in your pack, you should have a couple letters as well as the report on financial statements. Basically going to spend most of my time on the report on the financial statements. We spent about an hour last week with Superintendent Hood and Liz going over in detail. So obviously we're not going to go that detailed, but at a high level, and if you have questions or if Liz or John have any input to add along the way, feel free to interrupt at any time. But starting on page 1 of the financial report is the independent auditor's report. So remember, technically pages 1 through 3, that's our audit report. Those are the only 3 pages that are ours. We put our opinion on the district's financial statements. So while we help write this 80-page report, technically these 3 pages are the only ones that are ours. And I'm happy to report it's the clean or unmodified opinion. So the best opinion that the district can receive, similar to the past. One other thing to point out there at the bottom of page 1, it talks about change in accounting principle. You'll see this resonate throughout the report. For those of you that were here last year, there was a new government accounting standard statement number 101 on compensated absences that took effect this year. So this is saying we implemented it as required by the district. And I'll point out the changes that made throughout the way. Basically, it's just on your government-wide statements. It doesn't affect your general fund or how you pay for these things or cash flow or budget, but I'll show that as we come through it. The next section, I'll jump to page 11, but pages 4 to 11 really are your management discussion and analysis. So this is kind of like the Reader's Digest 10-page, 7-page synopsis of the rest of the report we're going to cover. I'd like to point out page 11 because it's the only place this shows up. This is basically everything's looking to prior year, except for this little page is looking forward for the most part. Couple highlights here. Obviously, the big one across the state, there's no state budget. So obviously you're several months into the new year and still don't know how much you're getting per pupil or anything along those lines. So that's hopefully coming soon, hopefully. And then the other one is the positive here, growing enrollment continues to grow. So plan is to exceed the projected 25 student increase. So that's good to see. That's not as common across the state, that a lot of districts are still seeing declines. So that's great news there. And the last one I just want to point out, as we go through this, we'll see there was about a $1.7 million use of fund balance in the current year as planned. The district was very adamant on reducing that deficit spending and creating a structurally balanced budget. So the 25-26 budget is balanced as of the June original budget. So that's good to see as well. Page 13 and 14, again, not going to spend a lot of time here, but this is what we call the government-wide statements. So it's all your funds put together, and then we add capital assets or your infrastructure. So you have a lot of new infrastructure, obviously, as you see around down the road here, as well as your long-term obligations. So the only thing I want to really point out there is, with your remaining capital projects funds and your capital assets less depreciation, there's about $158.3 million of capital assets outstanding and about $93.3 million of long-term debt related to that. So what that tells you is that you're paying down your debt much faster than your assets are depreciating. And that's what you want to see. Like, obviously you wouldn't want to see that flipped where you're upside down and your assets are worth a lot less than you owe on them. So page 15 gets into your governmental funds. So here's your general fund in column 1, obviously most important here. Main assets are cash and investments, about 10.4 million. You may accounts receivable, intergovernmental receivable is about 9 million. That's your July and August state aid payments predominantly, as well as a little bit of federal funds that were not received as of June 30. On the liability side, accrued salaries and retirement, about 7.5 million, and that's predominantly made up of your July and August teacher pay and retirement. Just getting to the other thing to point out there, we'll see, I guess, on the next page, but the 23 capital projects fund, 2019 has been fully used up and is done now as of the end of the year. And there's about $38 million remaining in the 2023 capital projects, series 1 and series 2. Jumping over to pages 17 and 18, you see your activity for your general fund in the first column. You had about $70.26 million of revenue, predominantly $50 million of that state aid, and a little over $10 million of property taxes. You spent $72 million, slightly over $72 million in the general fund. You were able to transfer 80,000 from the food service fund to cover indirect costs as allowed. Coming up with a use of 1.7 million, 1.7 million, $2,620 use of fund balance, ending fund balance of 9,225,000. So that's about 12.8% of your current year expenditures. So right in that 12 to 15% range that we like to see. The other two columns, you'll see you did spend just over $40,500,000 of capital projects during last school year, fiscal year. So about half of what is left, you have about $38 million remaining. The next section is the footnotes. Really just more detail. I'll touch on a couple, but more detail of those statements with a lot of definitions in paragraph form. Point out on page 21, just because it's important, we do audit all your bond funds in accordance with section 1351A, which is the bond and construction fund requirements, as well as the voter approved bond language. So we audit those extensively, and there was no issues found while auditing those. Pages 33 and 34. This just highlights the detail of your capital assets I discussed. If you look at the bottom right corner of the chart on 33, just under $110 million of capital assets net of depreciation. And you had added $41 million in the current year, and with like $6.8 million of depreciation on all your assets. Obviously, your buildings is predominantly the large piece of that. On log pages 34, 35, and 36 highlights your long-term obligations. You'll see the one thing again at the top of compensated absences and other benefits. It says as restated. That's as a result of the adoption of the GASB 101, which is about $1 million additional compensated absences that we had to accrue in your long-term obligations. On note 7, it's about 11 pages on the pension and other post-employment benefits. So anything you want to know about that, I will highlight a couple things on both of them because they're going the right direction and it's positive. A lot of it's related to the additional assets in the plan as well as paying them down. But on page 42, Okemuk's proportionate share of the pension went from 102 million to 77 million. So a $25 million decrease. So that's great to see. And actually on page 43, the other post-employment benefits, that is now overfunded as of the end of last year. So your proportionate share of that asset now versus liability is 13.5 million, and last year was 1.7 million. So both are going rapidly in the right direction, which is great to see. The last couple notes, note 12 and 13, which is on pages 50 and 51. 12 is just a couple new accounting pronouncements coming. Both are effective for this 25-26 fiscal year. Honestly, there's a little bit of change in the report, but nothing of significance in either of them. The first one moves a couple things from that first section I talked about, management discussion analysis, to a different part of the report where it talks about budget variances. And then the second one is how you record subscription-based IT arrangements and leases. We actually already record them this way, so that will be no change for the district, but it's a standard because it was not standardized and they're trying to make it more consistent across entities. 51, again, note 13 and 14 both again highlight GASB 101 adoption and the effect of that, which was $1,043,000 additional compensated absences and termination benefits. Probably the most important page 53, your budget to actual general fund. You'll see the first column, your original budget you adopted was planned use of $1.1 million of fund balance. You amended that as of June to use planned use of 1.73 million, and honestly, quite amazing. You use 1.70 million, or a 0.04% variance on the favorable side, which is what's required. Was $1 negative is technically illegal, but that's that's the closest one I've seen in quite a long time. So excellent budgeting. Definitely, you knew it was coming in not quite as well as originally budgeted, and you knew pretty much exactly where you were coming in at before the end of the fiscal year. Because remember, that has to be adopted prior to June 30. So great job with that. That's great to see. Last couple pages. Page 62. As in the past, you'll see this in the management letters comment as well, but it's your food service fund. It's a nonprofit food service fund. So the maximum fund balance allowed in that is 3/9 or 33% of your expenditures. You're over that by about 264,000. While you did add about 67,000 in the current year, I believe there's a plan to buy some capital assets related to the new buildings and new kitchens that'll bring that down within line. Honestly, we do 135 districts. I think 130 of them have this comment, and because of the last few years with everyone getting free meals and more people eating and reimbursing it, the costs did not offset that, and the fund balance in most of those food service funds grew. So that's in the management letter as well. And then the sinking fund, you have about 3.375 million available to use in the sinking fund, which is about 2 years property tax values. With that, the last section. Oh, I forgot to mention the draft. Jeez. Sorry. Not to mention the draft. If you didn't notice, this is the draft. This is why, though. On this last page here, it's related to the federal compliance. So you guys get about $1.9 million of federal funds, and the federal compliance supplement is what dictates the regulations and audit requirements over those funds. That has not been issued for this year yet, which covers June 30 audits
For anyone.
for anyone. So anyone with a federal audit or a single audit, more than $750,000 of expenditures, can't finalize an audit yet until that comes out. So that's why this is a draft. It's not expected to change at all. And what's in it, there's a draft of it out. So what's in the draft is not expected to change, but it's still in the review and approval process. It was supposed to be out in June, if that tells you anything. But that's why it's all draft form as of this point, because no one's allowed to issue until that comes out. Or they could possibly come out and say, June 30 audits, go ahead and use last year's because we're not going to finalize it. At which time we'll finalize, but otherwise it's the same as it's been. The school program, especially child nutrition cluster, really hasn't changed in several years. But from the draft compliance supplement this year to last year, there weren't any changes either. So we did audit child nutrition cluster for the district, which is just over $1 million of the 1.9. So 53.5% of your total federal expenditures. You'll see the unmodified opinion again, which is your best opinion or clean opinion. And all the no's and none reported means there's no issues, no findings, no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies on that. There was one management letter comment on that where you're required to do on-site reviews of every lunch program and half the breakfast programs by February 1st. You'll see that also as the other comment in the management letter. Those were done 1 to 15 days late. So right on, we didn't think that was significant. There were no issues in them as far as I'm aware. And obviously, procedures have put in place to have them done prior to February 1st for the current year. And the other letter is just a letter to those charged with governance. Again, talks about that you adopted GASB 101 as required. It talks about your significant estimates of pension and other post-employment benefits, as well as compensated absences and the assumptions made with the new GASB. And the rest of it's pretty standard language required to be submitted to the board, meaning there were no corrected or uncorrected misstatements, no disagreements with management or opinion shopping by management, and plain Jane, no other matters noted. So very clean audit. Appreciate all the help. It's been a great process. We were done for the most part several weeks ago, just really waiting on the compliance supplement still. So once that's done, we'll get it finalized and submitted to the state.
Great, wonderful. Thank you. This is good news. Does anyone have any questions? Trustee Doxy.
Yes, thank you for the clear overview of the audit, and Director Lentz, thank you. And congrats on a clean audit. I do have a question either for you or Superintendent Hood. When we can expect to hear the plan or timeline to address the comments in the management letter regarding the food service fund balance and timeliness of completing the food service reviews.
I would be happy to bring that back in October to the board. And yeah,
I've already talked to Director Krumko.
Yep.
So in terms of the on-site reviews, there was just some confusion in Director Krumko's office. This was his first full year in that role, and there was just some confusion about the dates and who does those within his office. He's already got at the start in January, after we get back from winter break, he's already got those on schedule to have those completed. So that was just an internal issue. And in terms of the food service fund balance, every year we have to file with the state of Michigan a report of how we're going to spend those down, the funds down. And we do have a plan for that. And because we are this right in the next couple of months going to be purchasing that food service equipment at Chippewa, that this would be a way we could also spend those down and get that comment written off, taken out.
Thank you for the timely update. And
You're
if you
welcome.
just,
before you called, but then I knew you were going to, I didn't know you did it yet.
yep, but if you can just keep us posted,
Yeah.
like with the timing of the
We can do
purchases,
that,
so
yeah.
we know we're
Yep.
in line with reducing that fund balance. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Trustee Kavanaugh.
I was just gonna say, thanks, Liz. I mean, you're the reason that was so well done, and I appreciate all your work on that.
Yes, Superintendent Hood.
So I just want to, again, thank Steve and his team, and certainly Executive Director Lentz and the members of the administrative team. A $73 million budget being off by $31,000 is a remarkable achievement, and one that we should not take for granted. That's because there's good financial controls and oversight by Liz, and certainly we empower and are empowering our people to understand their budgets and make local decision making, but that is incredible on a $73 million budget. I do want to clarify too, and it said we have a sinking fund with what was it, $3.375 million. That those are qualified funds, so we can't spend those on things like textbooks or staffing. We can only spend sinking fund on certain things. And you'll hear later tonight why there's been a set aside for that. It's really a safety net for the district in terms of future technology planning that Director Lentz and I have been setting aside when we decided to keep Cornell at its current location. The bond had to get cut by $5 million, and that $5 million was intended to replace devices. So we're coming up with a backup plan for how we fund those devices, and we'll talk about future funding options, but we've been doing a set aside every year to make sure that we don't get in a situation where we don't have that. The other thing I want people to be aware of is any of those bond funds, the 2023 capital projects, people in the community will tell me you have $43 million there. Why can't you, give everyone a big raise? Those again are qualified funds that we can only spend them on certain things that were in our bond application. You can't spend them on people. So those are for building our new buildings and getting our capital projects done. We're not legally allowed to spend them on raises or on new employees or things of that nature. So just want to be clear on that. And then the last thing, and Steve, I may need help for you on this, was you had mentioned that one of the, wasn't retirement, maybe it was healthcare was overfunded.
Yep.
By $13 million. Yep. So we don't have $13 million in our bank account here of overfunding. So can you just speak to that? Does the district actually have access to that 13 million?
No, it's all driven by the state and regulated on how much you contribute. The contribution on the other post-employment benefit piece has obviously gone down and shifted the allocation of all the funds going towards the pension liability. Because, well, your piece is, let's see here. Yeah. Your piece is 77 million. The total statewide underfunding of the pension is still 24.4 billion. So there's a long ways to go. It's still on pace for 2038, I believe, is to try to have it fully funded by then. But a huge portion of the current retirement contribution by districts is towards funding the unfunded liabilities.
That's all. I just want to make sure the community understood those things as well. Yeah.
Trustee Burns.
Just to follow up on that with like the unfunded liabilities, that's not the result of decisions that were made by the district.
Correct.
Just for the community's
It's all,
knowledge.
it's all dictated by the state of how much you contribute every year. And you have no control of how much you contribute or how little you contribute. They tell you exactly the number or the percentage every year. As they also have been contributing funds through state aid towards that liability, but yeah, there's zero local. It's Michigan Public School Employees Retirement System, and the state of Michigan directs all the contributions to it.
And if our trustees will recall back to the spring when Executive Director Lentz did that presentation about reductions in the amount we owe on those, we were expecting it to be reduced a certain amount and it wasn't. So it took away from our per pupil allocations. That's again connecting to this conversation. I just want you to understand when we're promised a reduction and then the reduction doesn't come or it's less than, it costs us money. And we tried to explain that during the budget season, everybody. So just connecting it back to that as well.
Thank you. I just, Superintendent Hood mentioned it, but I want to highlight 30,000 on the $70 million budget is incredible. So props to you, Liz, for doing that. I just have one question, Steve, and I ask you this every year that you come in here because I just want the community to hear it too. I just want to understand what the latest guidance is in the accounting world on a district that's kind of like Okemos on what's the optimal or kind of like recommended minimum fund balance.
So it always used to be like 12 to 15% recommendation, which still is a good level. Obviously, you want to have enough cash flow. You don't need state aid notes, ideally. They kind of shifted up towards more 15 to 20 with COVID and the desire to have a little bit more safety net and reserve in case something, God forbid, like that ever happens again. I'll tell you, Ingham County last year Ingham ISD's average was 21.5 and the statewide average was 24.7 last year, including all districts of all sizes. So kind of puts it in perspective a little bit. There's data out by district, obviously across the place or across the state. Obviously the lowest in Ingham ISD was 6.5.
So it's about 30, I think.
Up to like smaller districts. Some of the smaller ones are 40, 29.
40%.
Yeah. A couple smaller ones, but of your size, that most of them are low 20s, high teens, low 20s.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure the community understands kind of the reason why we're, holding a fund balance and the purpose for that. So thank you. Any other questions? Wonderful. Steve, thank you so much for coming. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Liz.
Yeah, sure. We can do that. Yeah, looking at the agenda just in time wise, why does anyone have an objection if we move our student report up sooner, just so our students can have the opportunity to get that done? And then HR Director Tredice, maybe with the new hires to get that out of the way as well. Does that work, gentlemen? Awesome. Superintendent Hood, do you want to introduce our students? We have a new student.
I see some new faces, so we'll let them do an introduction and give the update. So welcome.
Hi, thank you for having us. I'm James. I'm the senior student representative.
I'm Finn Regan. I'm the junior class student representative.
And today, our topics for you are homecoming week, clubs, sports, and miscellaneous. So to start out, this week obviously is homecoming. So on Friday there will be the homecoming parade and the game. The game I believe is against Halt, and the parade. There's been plenty of opportunities from like clubs and other organizations to and get involved with it. Like I know Action has an event that you can get involved with. NHS, any other clubs, like you can be asked to walk with the parade, so that'd be fun and hand candy to kids. We also have a Spirit Week this week, in which each day is a different theme. So you wear different things based on the theme. Today was Groutfit, which means that you wear all gray, like a gray outfit. That was fun. And then this Wednesday from 7:30 to 8 p.m. We have, or 7:30 to 8:30 p.m. we have a bonfire, which is the yearly bonfire that OHS hosts, the student council. So that'll be fun. And every class has a special shirt that's assigned every year. And those shirts were given out today. So that went well. And also on Friday, we have a pep assembly during school, in which each grade performs their pep rally dance, and those have been coming together pretty well. Today, each grade showed their pep rally dance to a few of the organizers to make sure that the dances were good. And then also guest forms for homecoming were due this last Thursday, September 18th. And then next up we have clubs.
Okay, so looking at the clubs, Will, which is Women in Leadership and Legacy, they had their meeting on Friday, where members made clips, and then those clips had like nice words and phrases on them. And then today they were kind of going around and clipping students, putting the clips on them, just to kind of spread the positivity across the school. Additionally, Spanish and French Honor Society has its first meeting of the school year this Wednesday, September 24th. And I think that's something a lot of people are looking forward to.
And then next up, we have sports. So this Saturday, Okemos boys soccer got a big win against Novi. That was great. And I did see there was this, I don't know if you guys heard, but one of the players, Liam Antcliffe, scored like a bicycle kick. It was amazing. I don't know if you saw it, but it was great. And then today, girls varsity golf plays away. And then tomorrow, boys JV tennis will play at home versus DeWitt. Also tomorrow, we have boys freshman, JV, and varsity soccer all playing away. And then girls volleyball and boys varsity tennis will also play away tomorrow.
And then finally for the miscellaneous category, we have no school tomorrow, or at least students don't. And that's something that we're kind of looking forward to. And that's just because our teachers have the professional development. So, yay, back today off.
And that's all we have. Any questions?
Any questions for our student representatives? Awesome. Well, Finn, I just wanted to welcome.
Welcome,
I'm
yeah.
glad to see you here. And I'll tell you the same thing I've told all the rest of our student representatives. You're here to represent the student body and give us a window into what's going on there. So we're looking forward to hearing that, right? Don't feel like you just have to give us a checklist of things that are going on. If something's going on in the student body that the board should be aware of, we hope you come here and tell us. So because you guys are our voice there. So we appreciate everything you guys do. So if you have anything else, you are all set. You're welcome to stay if you'd like, or if you want to hit the road and get some shut eye and sleep in tomorrow, that's fine too.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Director Trezise, is for our new hires.
Yeah, so we have interim director Trezise here to introduce two new hires since we have last introduced new hires, and kind of a tradition here in Okemos to make sure that our board community get a public introduction to those that are now part of the Okemos Public Schools family. So with that, turn it over to you, Pete.
Thank you. Since I was last year introducing several new teachers, we've hired two more. And the first one is Lauren, I'm going to guess this, Luzbatak. Close enough? Anything with a Z, people panic, and I know that. So Lauren was hired shortly after the beginning of the school year as a speech and language pathologist. Those are difficult positions to fill, and we got an experienced one, I think 5 years at Waverly, is that right? And prior to that, in various speech and language pathology roles, primarily with a maternity type program, as I recall. So she's at the high school. I hope you're settling in well, and they're keeping you busy. Thank you. Welcome. Second one is Ashley Lohr. Ashley is a music teacher at Hiawatha. She comes to us from Waverly, I believe.
Yep, Grand Ledge.
Grand Ledge.
Yep.
Well, they're over on that side of the state. So
That one's Waverly, that one's Grand Ledge. Yeah.
they're next to each other, sort of. So we welcome her. She's got lots of experience. I think about 10 years at Grand Ledge, and then prior at Olivet and some other places. She is a local. She grew up in Meridian Township. Her mother was a teacher here for 150 years and retired at the age of 29. No, 33 years, did I hear? 30. So we welcome you aboard.
Amazing.
Excellent background. She's hit the road running in Hiawatha, and they're very happy to have you here. So welcome to both of you.
And I'm hearing amazing things from the staff in both buildings about the quality of specifically these two hires. So thank you for choosing us. And we're here to support your success because your success is directly tied to the success of our students and families. So thank you.
Yeah, welcome. Thank you so much. We're happy to have you all here. That's awesome.
Thank
Warren?
the board for moving it up so they can get to sleep. They've got.
Yes. I
Yes,
figured-
please. Yes. You don't get to sleep in like our students, I'm guessing. So
They have to go to work tomorrow.
yeah, they have to work. Don't worry. I think we all do too. So no worries. Wonderful. Okay. Thank you so much, Director Trezise, Superintendent Hood. Next on our discussion is bond and millage finance update. Superintendent Hood.
Yeah, so we will have Executive Director Lentz come to the podium, and the purpose tonight of this update is to talk about where we at with our bond financing, and then overall, where are we at with our tax levies. So to give kind of a little update to the board in regards to the Series 3 bond issuance. You again saw the Series 1 and 2 in the audit there, and it's time to do another draw. So Liz will talk to you a little bit about that and the existing tax levy and some implications on future planning. So with that, Liz.
Yeah. Yeah, and we talked about doing just a little bit of an overview because while some board members, I wouldn't call you new anymore, but since the last time we've done a bond issuance, so this kind of gives a little bit of a background as well to bring you into that. So when we, and you see this later on tonight's agenda, that we have to twice per year authorize our taxing agencies what we're going to levy on homeowners and businesses for taxes. And what we levy is we have two operational mills. One is just our normal operating mills. And then there's one that's called extra voted. And the reason we have that is because the state constitution mandates that local property tax revenue can only grow so fast. In that if it grows faster than inflation, the millage rate must be rolled back. They call it a Headley rollback. So you see the 17.8795. That's because our voters approved 18 mills at some point, and it got rolled back because of the requirement of the state legislature. So our community, what route we have taken to combat that, because the state assumes we're going to levy 18 mills whether we do or not, and that would impact the amount of funding we get from the state between the state and our property taxes. So we have an extra just under 2 mills that are levied that we can utilize in these situations that the voters have authorized. We only need, though, we don't levy more than 18 mills between those two accounts. So we don't use all of that 2 mills we have. So we just levy. So we have the maximum or the 18 mills that we can levy. So that's what those two are. Then we have our sinking fund, which at one point in time, it was 1 mill that we levied for a sinking fund, but because of rollbacks, it's gone down to 0.985 mills. We have not asked the voters to go back to 1 mill. When that has been renewed, we've renewed it at whatever the current levy was. Those three, operating, the extra voted, and the sinking fund, were all done at the same time. We're all on the ballot at the same time in 2021. They expired December of 2031. So they're 10 years that those are levied for. So last year, this just potential election date, just to throw, when we did the last one in 2021, we did it of May of 2021 for knowing that they were going to expire in December of 21. So that if something happened, if one did not pass, we had another election cycle that we could potentially go back to the voters if we needed to, if that's what the district chose to do. So that's just throwing it on there as just for planning purposes. Our debt, we levy 7 mills of debt mills, and that has been that way for quite some time now. And you will see that as we move forward into our 2022, our Series 3 bond issuance, that I'll get to in the next page, that none of these, the different series that we're issuing the bonds, does not change that 7 mills. So we are 7 mills with all of these for that $275 million. It did not change the tax that we were levying on our taxpayers. So in 2023, we did a small issuance of 9.2 million, just to get some funds rolling, buy new devices, that type of thing. We had a second series that was, that we were issued in really early 2024 for a large share of about 77 million. And that's primarily for paying Chippewa monthly bills as those come in. And then the high school renovations that have gone on, Cornell design, those types of things. And then we need our next bond issuance coming up for early 2026. And for about 96.2. And this is what we had on our bond application. So we're right on track to where we thought we were going to be during the bond application process, because we did have to say that to Treasury, what we thought what we were going to issue and when. And then there will be a fourth levy in 2028. We didn't want to borrow everything up front because you start accruing interest on it. So we're having to pay interest the second we start borrowing that money. So the goal is to try to save some money by not, some taxpayer money by not issuing everything up front when we didn't need it till later in our cycle. In terms of the current issuance that will come to the board next meeting to take action on. It's up to 96.2 million, what we'll be asking you to authorize. It'll be a 30-year term. Again, no millage increase, interest cost maximum of 6%. And we're recommending that there are different ways you can sell the bonds. We are recommending that we sell these the same way we did in 2024, which is with a negotiated sale. And we partner with an underwriter to help sell the bonds to investors. We did this last time with Stifel Nicholas, and they are an Okemos company right down the street. If you drive down Okemos Road, Okemos and Jolly, and they did a fantastic job for us at the last bond issuance. The one item with negotiated sale is it is flexible. The pricing date, the bond size, maturity amounts, they're flexible. So if something happens on the date we want to sell these and something happens to the market, we don't have to sell them on that date. Or we can sell a smaller dollar amount, or we can change it up a little bit. If we have done a competitive, it's basically whatever happens on that date and time, and it's who's ever the lowest rate. But something wacky could have happened in the market, but we were required to use whatever happens on that date and time. Just with what's going on out in the political atmosphere, it just, some days are up, some days are down. We really wanted to leave some flexibility so we can get the best for Okemos and our taxpayers. And again, this will come to the board next October, at the first meeting in October and what the authorizing resolution will do was allow Superintendent Hood and myself to move forward with the sale and to accept an offer on the bonds. So, and then what we would do is we would bring that to the board where you would ratify that then. So you would ratify and take action and affirm that offer shortly after we sell the bonds and before we close on the bonds. So it allows us to sell them on that date and time when we need to, because there are things that have to be signed and handled immediately during that process. In terms of future planning, Superintendent Hood alluded to that and about the sinking fund. We're doing, you might say we're talking about future. Chippewa's not even done yet. Yep, we are. And one of the biggest drivers of that is student devices. We know that as Superintendent Hood explained, we did originally have 2 rounds of devices in this bond, and due to priorities that were, that we ended up needing to move forward with, we removed that second round of device that was going to happen later in the bond process. We are 1-to-1 district. We need to figure out how we're going to fund these. And so we're talking that through now. We are leaving, what should we recommend? We're having those conversations because we have to set the district up to be able to afford those devices. One thing is the sinking fund does allow instructional technology. We could utilize the sinking fund. However, that means we have reduced money for sinking fund projects such as roofs, asphalts, carpet, track resurfacing, all those building
boilers, all the
infras-
stuff that's happening with aging infrastructure. Yep.
Yes, all those items. So there is a negative to utilizing our sinking fund for technology infrastructure. We are allowed to do it. It wasn't our initial plan with the sinking fund, but there is a spot in there. If we had to, if it came down to it, we could continue to kind of, set aside this reserve. The other things that we're talking about, is we know Central Montessori, and we're going to talk, right now, we're just talking about big rocks. If you remember from the 22 election, we called, what are those big rocks, those big things that have to get done? And then, we can fill in the rest with some smaller rocks, but we have to make sure these big rocks fit into our next plan. We're talking about Central Montessori. We all know this building, in the age of it, and this would be the next building that we have to decide how to move forward with. What's going to happen to Kinawa, and are we going to repurpose Kinawa once those students move into their new building? Not only do we have student devices, but all the technology infrastructure, up in the ceilings, behind walls, all those things, our wireless access points, our cameras, door access, servers, those things, as you know, with technology last about 5 years. So you can string them along a little bit longer. But those are things that we're talking about now. I also have buses on here. We did have 17 buses built into this current bond. We purchased 4 already, but those came in at 40% higher than what we estimated because the cost of buses has skyrocketed.
100 to 140,000.
So if it stays what it is right now, we'll be about 700,000 over budget if we decide to continue to purchase all 17, or do we reduce that amount to fit within the budget within the bond? So these are all things that we're talking about now. We just wanted to give the board an overview that we are having these conversations internally to set the district up for success in the future. Superintendent.
Yeah, and that's why we've been intentional, like with the bond work and looking at food service has a fund balance. Hey, food service, can you contribute to offset some of the bond costs for cafeterias? Because we know the buses are coming in at $700,000 over. So we've been really intentional about trying to meet as many of the promises to our voters as we can in creative ways with other funding sources we have. So stretching that sinking fund, stretching the food service dollars. And we still don't know, we still have to get the bids for Cornell. Those are going out this fall, early winter to see what that comes back on. And then Kinawa, and we know markets and tariffs and all that stuff is still really unknown. So we think we have a great plan. We think we're forecasting as much as we possibly can and building in some safeguards, but that's the type of intentionality that the team is taking. So, say, well, do something else with that food service money. Could we? Yeah, then it's going to come out of the bond, which we can spend the food service money on this. On cafeteria equipment. We're allowed to. We're restricted. Kitchen equipment. Yeah. Yes. Thank you. Kitchen equipment. So we're trying to see where there's allowable things that we can use to relieve some of the stress on the bond.
Yeah. Are there any questions?
Any questions?
Jason?
Yes.
So on the bond, so when that goes out, like if interest rates were to fall, is there a way to kind of roll that over, sort of refinance that debt?
So you can, all of our debt is written such that we can refinance after a period of time and put those back out to refinance and pay off. So I can't remember what the number of years we have to hold them before we can refinance, but they are structured that way.
Okay, great. Sure. I mean, I know that it's kind of early as you're thinking about like the future, but like in terms of like another bond or like in theory, we could have ask our voters for a larger sinking fund millage. Is there other thoughts on like what strategy you're leaning toward?
It's funny you should mention that. We would like to have that conversation with the board in October to talk about potential funding mechanisms and timelines and see we'll share some of our thinking and see what does the board think and what do you need to help make an informed decision about that? I'll just remind our taxpayers that $275 million, we always said it was never going to take care of all of the needs. So I know it's an enormous number, but by the amount of communications that have gone home about us chasing our tails on facility needs, that there's still needs we have in the district to meet. And that 275 is pretty much all dedicated already. So we need to figure out where we head next for long-term planning.
And I was just going to say, I mean, I was going to mention it during our executive, but we do have a penciled in work session to discuss kind of future facility needs, bond planning. Just because, you know, I want to make sure that, or we wanted to make sure that the whole board kind of was in the loop in terms of our facilities assessment that we did. Kind of, I mean, there's a lot of work to be done in the future. So there's some discussion to be had on how to meet those needs. I had a couple questions, if you don't mind, Liz.
Sure.
Trustee Burns mentioned it though, the whole sinking fund issue and how, you know, can that be part of the discussion of raising the sinking fund? Just because a big advantage of a sinking fund is we pay 0 interest on a sinking fund, which is a good thing.
Yep. Our sinking fund that was voted in is through December of 31. We could have a second sinking fund and do something different. So we could take some action before December of 31 for another sinking fund millage.
My understanding is the district can levy a maximum of 3 mills on a sinking
I
fund.
believe that is the current,
No.
the laws changed a couple of years ago.
Yeah, from 5
And
to 3,
sinking funds are now written such that you could purchase school buses from sinking funds. However, when the voters took action on ours and authorized our sinking fund, buses weren't an allowed use of it. And so we could not, with the current one we have, purchase buses out of that. That would have to be in another sinking fund vote that the voters take action on, because it was not something that they had the opportunity to approve or not approve.
Thank you. I look forward to that discussion about the sinking fund, just because, you know, based on what we're dealing with now with kind of catching up on all this stuff from the past, right? If we had those funds to not get behind on those as far as our kind of facility planning process, that might be an attractive option. And I have another question. And I just thought of this today. I didn't send it to you. So just push back on me if you don't have the answer, and that's okay. I've been thinking a lot just in terms of when we planned the bond, in terms of the total taxable value of the district. It's gone up probably faster than we anticipated when we did our bond planning. And how does that affect our ability in the future to, you know, either issue new bonds or pay off early? I guess, how does that kind of go into? I just did some quick math. I mean, we're around 5% a year, over 5% a year, which is, that's, you see where I'm going. I'll let you go.
Where you're going.
Okay.
And what was estimated, we work with PFM, they're our financial advisors for these types of bond sales. And what was included in our applications, it is almost coming in exactly with where they estimated. So unfortunately, there isn't like.
I thought I had found some cash for you.
It is coming in almost exactly with where it was estimated. So there's not, you know, a bigger cushion that, you know, kind of grows itself.
Well, in the end, I guess that's good news, right? Because our estimates that I was just thinking, oh, wow, maybe we have some, you know, ability there. So, okay, great. Anyway, I look forward to that future kind of discussion in this bond plan, just because I know how much needs there are in the district that we have to meet. And I know the expectations of our community to meet those needs. So anything else?
And I did run a Montessori committee last year. And I have a recommendation for the future of Montessori that I'm going to share with the board here this fall. The committee is aware of it. We looked at Montessori enrollments, K-8. We looked at, you know, what do we want the Montessori to be in the future? Do we want to expand? Do we want to contract? Do we want to expand certain areas, contract others? And there's a recommendation for the board, and it'll be no surprise that we need a new facility for Montessori, especially elementary Montessori. So, so you'll hear some data and reasoning of why, but we don't have money for that or a place yet, and that would require a bond. So that is probably the most pressing need with the Big Rock, which we're not surprised from, because we heard feedback from that community and the aging infrastructure here. I do want to be careful too, in terms of, we do talk a lot about catch up, and that we are kind of filling some of the needs from the past. I want to be clear, the past was not mismanaged. We would not have been able to levy $275 million and $25 million before that if we had gone out and done so. Like, the district is getting the most out of the current properties we've had and infrastructure we've had, to the point where, yeah, now it needs to be replaced, but we would have never been able to pass a 0 mil increase, $275 million bond if those things hadn't been maintained for a very long time very well. So I think it can sometimes come across from me unintentionally like, oh, the people in the past did a bad job. They didn't. They did an outstanding job, which is why we could do $275 million at a 7 mil, no increase. So doesn't mean we have issues now with, you know, infrastructure that we've put a lot into and it's starting to fail. Yes, but please know that's not meant to be critical at all of the past.
Trustee Wynn.
I don't know if this is a question for today, but I was just wondering, like, the overarching kind of plan when you're talking about a bond, like, what is the process? I mean, you mentioned the big possible rocks, but what is the process for like deciding what would be in a proposed bond and what is the timeline for something like that?
So that's what we would like to talk to you about in some greater detail. It would require us bringing to you some assessments, which we've been doing, continued assessments of our needs facilities assessment from a few years ago, which we've been updating along the way. And our partners with Veritas have been helping us kind of keep a laundry list, a parking lot of the things that we've discovered that we are not going to be able to get to in this bond that are needs that we have. And we can supplement that with other things. We typically talk about trying to find a win in the bond for everyone. So looking at our elementaries, looking at our middle, looking at our high, looking at our community, what can we give that would bring people out to support? And what in this case would have to be a tax increase if we're going to go for a bond. You can imagine if I just put a Montessori bond out there, I mean, we have 400 elementary families that go there. Why is the whole community going to vote
So-
yes on that, right?
There are different, so I just want to
Yeah.
caution, there are different ways to finance
There are.
and not necessarily say at this point there would be a tax increase because there are different ways to finance. It's the will of what are we going to move forward with? But that was going to be for a different different
presentation,
day
yeah.
conversation. Yeah.
So we need to bring on partners in terms of an owner's rep and potentially a not construction manager, architect, typically to help us run that process. And we have a whole bunch of timelines we'll share with you as a board. And we work backwards from when that application has to be submitted to the state to what does board action need to be before that to backwards all the way. So that's what we're going to try to talk to you about and see what your will is in terms of what committees being run.
Yeah.
Community committees, providing input. Yes. It's a major undertaking, but one we've done twice in 2019 and 2022, plus millage and operating millage in 2021. Thanks for that clarification, Liz.
Yep.
To answer your question? Okay, good.
Sort of.
Well,
yeah. Yeah.
Well, there's the
We'll
whole,
get you more to
Yeah.
be continued.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I just think my question was, as a new board member, but also for anyone that might be watching, is that we're not like seeing these big rocks on the screen and saying, oh, and then in the next meeting, we're going to decide if we want to go for a bond for those. It's a larger conversation
Very much
where
so.
we spend time really thoughtfully deciding.
I believe it was probably a year and a half of planning, if not more, for the November 22 election, that we were planning a year and a half, if not longer or more before an election date. So there's a lot of work and time and effort that goes into those.
Thanks, Liz.
Trustee Kavanaugh.
I'm just gonna say, and last time we had identified things that we couldn't get to, like Montessori was number 4 that we kept trying to get to. So some of those things we just go back to, you know, like did we have to put off? And like, we got really clever and we're able to do 2 middle schools by combining them.
Mhm.
So I mean, that was really helpful too, to get more for our dollar.
Yeah,
So
or bang
it-
for our buck too.
Yeah.
You know, share some of the services like the libraries and the kitchen. Yeah.
Trustee Shrestha.
So it's something just caught my attention that Superintendent Hood said. So you said Veritas has a laundry list or parking list of things that they are not able to accomplish or do with this bond. But that does not mean we're sacrificing the quality of the whole project, right?
No, not at
Okay.
all. It's just our bond can only be spent on what the voters approved use for. So if we're uncovering new things, 5 years later, we're making no.
Anyone else? Great. This will be a common topic of discussion going forward to make some decisions here. So thank you. All right, where are we now? We are now through all of our discussion items. Oh, no, we are not. I'm sorry. Superintendent Hood, strategic planning.
Yeah, so I get to talk strategic planning. I'm going to invite, since I don't really want to go up there and stand, and Stacy may have a few things to add. Stacy, do you mind coming up and just sitting up here in case you have stuff to add? Because you were a thought partner on this for me, so I'd appreciate that. Thanks. We'll have Stacy sit down and I'm going to present here. Let me pull up the right document. Oh, that's not the right one. There's 3 of them. I got to pick the right one. No, that's not the right one either. Oh. There we go. That's the right one. All right. Present this from here. All right, Nate's going to pop out and work his magic like he always does. Ta-da. Thanks, Nate.
Yep.
Okay, presentation 2, in terms of strategic planning. This meeting, we're going to talk about where our team thought good 5-year goals would be, what board level data sets we have, and hopefully talk about next steps in terms of the board reflecting with us on how often you want some updates for monitoring, okay, on those. So last meeting was in the dark gray here. We went over the goals, the activities, evidence, if so, then what's, and example of an implementation plan. Tonight is the bottom, goals and measures selected, 5-year goals and monitoring from the board. Okay, so that's really what we're getting into tonight. Again, we have our core values there. I'm not going to read those again, but just a reminder to our community that those core values we want evident and reflected upon in every part of this process. So innovation, integrity, and pursuing excellence for all, and safe, empathetic communities. And that strategic mission of what we are and what we want to be with our vision statement. So educating with excellence and empowering every learner, and unwavering focus on every learner every day together. 5 goal areas that we reviewed last time. And you're going to see some data sets shared on each of those for you tonight. A reminder, the board developed our goal areas, and those were adopted before the end of the school year was out. And then the administrative team is developing the operational plan, and we're going to implement that. And the board's job is to make sure you're comfortable with how we're presenting and monitoring the outcomes. Are we doing what we said we do? And is it making progress towards the stated goal? So that's what we want you to keep your eye on tonight. So board level data, we had some really good discussions on our administrative team of kind of what are high level data, big picture data, 30,000 foot view, as we say, that helps show progress towards our strategic goals, that we're being accountable, and that our students are being successful across our system. Again, we're not here to get into the day-to-day operations or individual students or teachers, that type of thing. So examples of that are like a district graduation rate or student achievement data that you're used to, attendance rates, staff trends with retention and turnover, survey results, district-wide climate surveys that we're working on, health indicators like that sinking fund and that per pupil spending and fund balance that we talk about so often. But we really don't want to get into what's this single classroom test score? What's this about one school? What's this about this individual student's behavior? That's kind of for us to know and lift up more to trends and themes for the board, okay? So you can look at policy, you can look at budget, what do we need to meet the needs, and you can look at evaluating the superintendent on progress towards those goals, okay? So first thing I want you to know is we did do a PD on how to develop our survey. And in full disclosure, Trustee Burns volunteered as a community member with some expertise in this area. to make sure that our perception survey is intentionally aligned to our goals. So are we measuring what we said we were going to measure? And how do you write questions that get at that? Okay. So we spent, I think, gosh, was it an hour and a half? How long was it? Hour and a half with an administrative team. And Trustee Burns helped us break down every goal area into kind of some core constructs. So what are the themes we're looking for? What do we want to know more about? And how are questions going to illustrate that? So he helped us think about those constructs that are embedded in all our goals and how different populations, our stakeholders of students, staff, and families or parents might see these constructs differently through their lens. And then how our questions reflect getting information from each of those stakeholder groups. So it was a really intentional way to take these broad goals that the board set and to think about what's the construct in there. Are there sub-constructs or sub-constructs that make up that? And then what are potential questions or indicators of success or not success towards those? Okay. And he worked us through a worked example here with learning, environment, and culture. And we had different groups working on different goals to really be intentional about when we come up with a survey question, what goal or goals is it tying back to? And what part of the goal is it tying back to? So we'll be able to do a crosswalk for the board and community between our surveys and what goals or parts of goals they give us insight into. Instead of just asking a question, it's really intentional about why was that question asked and what does it tell us about our goal? Okay, so that is under development and we're looking at a fall launch for that. Okay. In terms of tonight, we're going to let you know in terms of data where we stand with our cohort group. So taking you back to the spring, a refresher for you is when we worked with MASB, we selected 5 districts that were like districts according to OCMIS, very diverse across the state. And we said, let's compare our data and ourselves to them outside of OCMIS so we can see how are they doing compared to us and what does that tell us about our functioning and where we might be able to grow. Those 5 districts were East Lansing, Byron Center, East Grand Rapids, Saline, Northville. So you'll see data where we compare our current data to theirs, and we'll give you some snapshots of updates of that as well. In terms of when we say how are we doing compared to our like districts, this is kind of who we want to compare ourselves to. Then we talked about what board level data sources should be utilized. So again, that 40,000 foot view. And then finally, we're going to talk about hopefully at a work session soon is what is the frequency that you want to get those updates and what makes sense? When is the data available? How often do you want it? And then let's build it into the board calendar so you're getting that cadence of updates. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is our first goal area is the academics and programs goal area. And the first thing I'm going to do is share with you cohort data. So here's our cohort data on the M-STEP from 24-25. The OCMIS is the first column on all of these. You can see the line going across for average. And then you have East Lansing, Byron Center, East Grand Rapids, Saline, and Northville. Okay. So you can see we're below our peer cohort in terms of 3rd grade ELA M-STEP.
I just have a point of clarity.
Yes.
This average line is the average of our cohort.
Of the
here.
cohort.
That is not the statewide average.
Correct.
Just so.
Yes, thank you for that
Yeah.
clarification. So, our thinking is we should at least be at the average of our cohort, if not higher, just so you know our thinking. And you'll see the goals we're setting are in most cases higher than that, but you'll see that. Okay. Then you'll see another language arts data point in 8th grade. And again, those same 5 districts plus OCMIS. And let me move this down so you can see the line here. So the average line for ELA, okay, where we're just above average there in our cohort. Same schools, and now in 8th grade, check in our measurement point. And then we look at our SAT. It's not called ELA there, it's called ERS. Yes, thank you. But it's a literacy measure, a little broader than that actually. But you can see where we are then with our cohorts again, a little bit. I'm gonna show you can see that line, a little bit above average in terms of 11th grade. Now I'm going to show you math. And I'll tie this together with what data we're collecting in a moment. So just be patient with me. Again, 3rd grade, Okemos, below average with our cohort. Okay. And then, oops, it should be 8th grade. That should be 8th grade, not 11th grade. There's a typo on that slide. PSAT's 8th grade. So that's 8th grade PSAT, just a touch below average. Very, very close. And that average there is just above 60% on the left. So these columns do change on the left. They're not all the same. So just so you're aware of that. And then in terms of SAT, math, again, right about at the average with our cohort. Those tend to be achievement measures that we use that are high level, accountability measures that are given every year by the state. In the SAT measure specifically, this is a college or career readiness measure, okay, that we're showing you. So what percentage of kids in math and English language arts are college or career ready is what that number means for SAT, okay? So then we've looked externally. Now we also want to look internally at what our achievement data and goals are telling us and how do we want to get to a strategic target, okay? I'm going to talk to you about that purple target in just a second, but you can see that we want 80% of our kids on the MSTEP and the PSAT and SAT to be proficient or college ready. So we're setting that 80% as the bar of where to be in 5 years. And you'll see on this data, there's overall data, and then there's specific 3rd grade data pulled out in the parentheses for MSTEP, and there's 8th grade data pulled out for math. Why, John, are you pulling out 3rd grade reading and 8th grade math specifically? When we talked about what indicators should be in our strategic plan, 3rd grade reading law is there for a purpose. By the end of 3rd grade, you should have learned how to read, so now you can read to learn. So having that 3rd grade measure as high as can be, and we're saying 80%, really sets most of our students up for being able to shift from learning to read to reading to learn, okay? And when we look at our prior data, pre-COVID, we were at 80%. So we think we can get back there, okay? If not higher, eventually. For 8th grade math was chosen because it tends to be the window to success in algebra at the high school level. So 8th grade, if you're not mastering the math content by 8th grade, you're going to struggle with algebra or harder courses at the high school. So that measure, again, we thought was a real indicator for our students that we want to pick and kind of draw to the top. And then again, when we looked at pre-COVID data, we were 80% proficient or so on those pre-COVID. So we think we can get back there, okay? And these were slides that were shared with the MTSS team, and Stacy pointed out what growth needs to happen on an annual basis, I think, on the right-hand side to get there. So we had a 3rd grade maths or 3rd grade language arts has to improve by 4.6% a year. And 8th grade math has to improve by average of 4.1% a year to meet our goal within 5 years. Okay. So that's inward looking. And so is our OPS growth goal for NWEA. So you'll see in the purple, we're saying in 5 years, we want 100% of our kids to meet their growth measure on NWEA. 100%, John, that's impossible. Is it though? Because an NWEA growth goal is individualized for that specific student's needs. So we feel if we set it any lower than 100%, that we're saying that we're not working to meet all students where they're at and help them find success. Is that lofty? Yes, but why can't we, since that's an individualized measure, have 100% of our kids have growth, okay? And you'll see our data here from 22, 23, all the way to 24, 25. This is the actual hot off the press fall data in terms of our
It's still spring data,
Oh, that's spring data.
fall
Thank
to
you.
spring. So
Thinking M-Step, sorry.
yes, that's okay.
That was the
So
M-Step.
we won't have our updated baseline for this until the spring of this year.
Yep.
So that's more to come.
So you can see we're making some movement, but we're not where we want to be yet. Okay. This measure is an internal measure. Oakham is comparing itself to ourselves on a year-to-year basis and is not a measure where you see us compared to our cohort group because we don't have access to their individual MWA scores. Okay. Then you're going to see a data point with our academics and programs about four-year graduation cohort rate. And you can see that OCMS averages 93.62% of our students graduating in 4 years. You can see the average in our cohort is just about 95%. And you're going to see that we have set a goal at 96% in 5 years and where that would move us in our cohort here. Okay. High is 97.5. And we certainly think we can raise that by 2.5 percentage points in 5 years, number of kids that are graduating. So when I lift that up to what board level data would we bring to you, when I show you some of that data, our literacy measures, which I went over, were 3rd, 8th, and 11th grade, that we want to make those all be at 80% at or above being proficient. And the K-10 fall to spring growth being 100%. In math, it's the same with the 80% measure and the 100% on the NWEA. John, why did you choose 80%? When we look at our MTSS diamond, our expectation is 80, if we have a good system, 80% of our kids should be getting their needs met in tier 1. 15% or so need that tier 2 differentiation on both sides, and 5% need about that tier 3 differentiation again on both sides of that triangle. So either extensions or support. Okay. So we'd be in line with what research says is the best practice. It doesn't mean we won't try to go higher than that in the future, but we want to get up to that within 5 years. And then you'll see our 4-year graduation rate. We want to move up from 93.6% to 96%, which we think when we look at our cohort is doable. Okay. What you don't see here is the perception data yet, and you will once that is done. But we are, again, aligning all those questions, the survey data questions, to those constructs and potential indicators that will show how do students, staff, and families feel about our academics. And again, we broke that down, the goals down into lots of indicators that we need, that we're writing questions for. So that will come forth to you, and you'll see those pre and post perception data tools as well. So that's for the academics and programs, what we thought we would bring forth for board level data set. Next goal is going to be our learning environment and culture goal. And I'm going to show you again what data do I have to share with you about our cohort. And when we talk about learning environment and kids being at school, hey, attendance would be a good indicator, and how often students are chronically absent. So we took our cohort data again. And this one, Stacy had to double and triple check for me because the Okemos Schools attendance rate happens to be just about exactly 94%. And the average in the cohort was exactly 94%. Percent chronically absent, we're at about 16.8% of our kids are chronically absent. That means, I'm trying to remember, 10 or more school days absent. And average in the cohort was at 14%. So we have some goals to move us up in comparison to our cohort for both of those attendance measures. Yeah, of course.
Attendance rate, does
Yeah.
that mean like on any given day,
Yeah.
94% of our kids are there?
Yep. So we believe we can increase that attendance rate to 96%. So we're at 94 right now. We want to increase that by 2% over the next 5 years. And then we want to decrease our chronically absent students from 16.8% to 12.5%. That's a 25% reduction in chronically absent students. Is our goal to show you where we want to head in within 5 years. And then a lot of perception data on learning environment and culture on the surveys. So we have our own perception survey, again, with those same constructs that will map out for you and share with you. And then we do have a MyFi survey that's given by the state in 7th, 9th, and 11th grade. Cohorts take that every 2 years, and there's specific questions we'll pull out about safety, meaningful coursework, enjoyment, engagement at school. So we can use that to balance what our own perception survey data is saying in terms of learning environment and culture. You may ask about some data here that you think is missing, and I'm happy to have that conversation. We talked about suspension rates, and we talked about rates of like reported bullying, and really toss that around for a bit in terms of, are those board level indicators, or if we can get those better, will our attendance rate go up and our chronically absent rate go down? Like, what's the top layer that we want to work towards? And what are some of the unintended consequences of bringing some of those data sets forward? I can tell you, when we look at our bullying reports, is less of those reports a better thing, or is more? Right? I don't know. Because if people are underreporting bullying, shouldn't we want to encourage them to report it? So if we set a goal saying we want to reduce the number of incidents of bullying that are reported, okay, so now I'm going to make you, if you know, don't report your bullying. We're going to send that number down. Like, we didn't feel, and we don't have a lot of them reported right now. So we didn't know that that was going to be a great indicator of that sense of belonging when we have survey questions that might get at better data. You know, people treat me with kindness. People, you know, there's an adult I can talk to about problems in school, those types of indicators, as opposed to just a generic number of bullying incidents that we have. Same with suspension data. We've brought suspension data to the board before, and we could do it again, but we suspend so infrequently that what we don't want to do is say that there's not a time and place for suspension, because there is. It is a tool in the toolbox to running a safe and effective school. It's not one that we go to very often. We do our 7 factors and do other interventions. But again, is lower suspension rate a good thing? I would argue ours is pretty low already. And if we made it lower, we're probably not running orderly schools. So we can have that conversation more with the board, but I wanted to just put out there some of the thinking of why you're not seeing some things. And again, we'll have questions on our surveys about students feel like the rules are applied fairly. Students feel like they're held accountable, and others are held accountable fairly, to kind of show you in some of that perception survey data. Okay. You noticed I gave you some cohort examples and some specific data examples. There are not those for every goal area. For example, communications and community engagement. We don't currently have data to share with you on that, but we will get data through the strategic planning process. So the 2 areas we're going to bring you data are in engagement. We're going to bring you district social media engagement metrics, so you can see how many people are engaging with our content, and are we growing that over time to be telling our story in a better way. So likes, comments, shares, retweets, whatever it is. We currently don't have tools to do that with emails that are opened. That's something that we could, again, if we come to the board and ask for some expenditures, the board will say, what are the budget impacts of some of these? There are going to be some that if we want to gather more data, we have to put a system in place to do that. So we're going to bring to you social media engagement. There's a plan that's going into place, and then a lot of perception data in terms of transparent, consistent, easily accessible communications and feeling engaged and a part of the educational process and outcomes at schools. So a lot of perception and some statistical data here on how often are people interacting with the data that we put out there. Okay. Next, you're going to see personnel and leadership. So we're going to be talking about staffing and perception. This one is one I had to click on for you because the chart was too big to show. So I'm bringing this up in Munetrix for you. Accept, welcome guest user. Okay. So, and I'm going to give you a 1 year. I'm going to do longevity, just, oops, not that one, school year. I'm going to do last year. So this shows us, this chart shows us our cohort group and how many teachers have been there less than a year to 36 to 40 years by percentages. So you can just see just visualize kind of the curve. where you can see Byron Center has, most of their teachers in the 6 to 10 year range, and 14% of their teachers are in their first year. And you can see in East Grand Rapids, they're at 19, they're at 19% in drop off, and then 5 years in drop off. You can kind of see the shape of those. You can look at East Lansing, 20% of theirs are less than a year experience, 17% 1 year of experience, and where they are.
Experience or years in that district?
Years in that district. Yep. So you could have a teacher that moved and they're in the first under a year in the district. Yes. Thank you for clarifying that. And then Northville, you can see Northville where they're at. And then you're going to see Okemos on the bottom here. And then we have Celine in there. So again, what we're going to try to do here is what we want to do is see are we retaining teachers and getting the 5 year and up number larger, okay, over time. So it kind of takes 5 years for someone to settle in. Are we getting people that are staying here 5 years and longer is what we want to measure for you and show that retention piece, okay? And then we can compare the district to our cohort group and see how are they doing with retention, how are we doing with retention, are there differences? And if there are, we can reach out and see what they're doing differently than us, right? So we have that for you. Oops, I think I closed sorry, I had to go back to, there we go. So in our personnel and leadership, we want to measure for you and teacher with 5 or more years at Okemos. We want 75% of our staff to be 5 or more years, and we're going to use Immunetrics gauge to show that for you. That's what I just showed you here. Okay. And the other personnel leadership data sets that we saw really fell to surveying about who can report that they're feeling we have highly qualified teachers and staff, not just teachers. Representative of our student body, our students feeling like there's someone at school that understands and is representative of student body. That one was a tough one for us to figure out how to measure. And we figured the best way to measure that was a perception survey. We don't know, nor can we force people to necessarily divulge identity that they may not want to divulge on divulge to their employer. So we got to be careful in that one. Professional growth and leadership development. We want to make sure staff are reporting that. And then that there's that increased trust, collaboration, and accountability in our perception survey. So again, you'll see some constructs and potential indicators for each of those in our survey that will show you over 5 years that we're making progress in all of these. And then finally, our board level data set on operations and facilities. This one has more of like a thing for you, and that's going to be sharing with you our infrastructure inventory. So what is our budgeting and replacement plan for things that are coming up? Buses, technology infrastructure, carpets, roofs. Like we want to make sure that that plan is put together along with what the budget impact is ongoing, rolling for you. So that'll be a document that's actually produced and ready for you through all of through food service, operations, technology, transportation, yada, yada. And then that district facility plan that we kind of allege to what's our long range vision and facilities for the district. And then what's our path to get there in terms of funding mechanisms. So you'll see that in terms of the operations and facilities. And then there's perception data in terms of safety, cleanliness, well-kept facilities and grounds, high quality classrooms, and that we're meeting learning needs of the evolving community. Again, these tie back to the constructs in the goal. And we felt a survey was the best way to report that out. Again, we talked about things like tickets and ticketing systems, and we can report that to you. However, lifting that up higher to a perception survey, if tickets are going well, you're going to see indicators that we have safer, cleaner classrooms, that we're getting responses. So we tried to lift it up to the highest level and then leave some of the sub level data for administration to know and work on as indicators throughout the year. And then our next steps would be to follow up with the board on a work session to talk further about this and then figure out what's a cadence on when this data should be shared. Stacy and I have some feelings about when the data is available and when it would be most relevant to the board. And want to have that. I think we talked in executive session about executive planning about a potential work session on talking about this in a little more depth and kind of how many times and what time of year for each of these. And with that, I'll pause. And Stacy, did I miss anything you wanted to clarify? Okay. And I'll take questions, comments from our trustees.
Thank you, Superintendent Hood.
Yeah.
I'm going to start with Trustee Burns just because I never looked left first.
Yeah.
Oh, did she?
Yeah, so on some of these, so like one that comes to mind is like the NWEA goal. So I think that 100% growth is the right goal for that particular measure.
Yep.
My one question though is, so we get a lot of state funding to offset the cost of administering those assessments. And so what happens if that funding goes away?
So if that funding goes away, we're gonna have to come back to the board and ask the question of, will the board fund it? Or is there another measure that the state is now gonna replace it with that we need to consider? Sure. Stacy?
And I see Executive Director Lentz is left, but we used some of our ESSER funds to buy that over multiple years when we still could do that. So I think we have it paid for the next 2 years. So we got a better deal. So we did that. So I know we're good for at least I think the next 2 years out of the 5 years of the strategic plan. But I would say that this is something that is really crucial to looking at that data for our teachers to think about those instructional practices. So I think it would be a high level priority
Yes.
for teaching and learning.
Trustee Doxy.
Thank you, VP Phelps. Staying on the academic and programs. First, thank you for the presentation and, and Stacy and the team and the thoughtfulness that
Thank you.
went into the different data sets. So definitely like seeing the 100% NWEA growth, as well as the 80% growth on the MSTEP, but I've said it from day one, like until all of our kids are where they need to be. So once we hit that 80% mark in 5 years, keep going up until all of our kids are proficient. So that's just my ask. So thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions? Trustee. Oh, Trustee Burns.
So on the staffing.
Yes.
Of like 75%. So the one thing that comes to
Yeah.
mind is, your success in future years is determined by like your early outcomes. And so I was just thinking,
Yeah.
like
that's a good point.
it's important to be in a position or not be in a position where something happens, you have high attrition in 1 year, and then by definition that you cannot
Not
meet
meet the
that
goal.
goal
That's a
anymore.
great point.
So I wonder if maybe just like year over year turnover could be something to think about.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of it that way, and that's really good insight. So thank you for that.
I don't know if my school data lists that, but I think it's the Office of Educator Excellence at MDE has a dashboard that they put out that you can get that by district.
Let me follow up on that. That might be a better indicator. As to your point, if you don't make it in year 1, you're not gonna get to year 5 or greater. So yeah.
Trustee Kavanaugh.
Thank you. I had a question. I know there's always 3 groups that we're always watching their achievements, African Americans, just economically disadvantaged and special ed. Was there any thought of including those specific groups, or is the thought that if we're going to have 80% of our kids be proficient, they would be included in there?
So we could certainly desegregate. So, and when we report out to the board, desegregate some of that data for those groups that have historically been difficult for the district to kind of raise up. What we don't want to do is make sure that 80% of our kids are proficient, but none of those are. And that gets to the vision of all students every day, all the time. So that's stuff that Stacy's already drilling down with the MTSS team, and the principals are drilling down with their teachers. But we'd be happy to provide some high level summary of that, so the board has some oversight of that.
That would be great, just so we're all aware of monitoring those groups.
Yep.
Thanks.
Trustee Doxy?
Yes, I'm on trustee Burns trail today. So follow up on the teacher longevity,
Yes.
looking at the cohorts, are you in terms of teachers of 5 years or more and how long they're staying? Are you also looking at, are we comparable with our pay to our cohort districts? Is that something that you are like?
So that is something that Peter's looking in to for us. The issue is pay versus compensation, steps and lanes, numbers of days worked, and there's lots of, to compare apples to apples there becomes a very slippery slope. So we're trying to come up with a way to disaggregate that well for the board and for our negotiations team, quite honestly. Because you could be the highest paid, but you don't have great insurance, right? And different bargaining units value those different things. You could be the highest paid, but you have 25 steps to get there, whereas we have 15 to get to the highest pay. So someone's got to spend 25 years in a district to get to the same level you have to be with an Okemos over 15 years, or vice versa. Starting pay can be different. Some districts pay for a master's plus 30, a doctorate. So it's really difficult to compare apples to apples when it comes to those. So you're talking about overall compensation, or you're talking about pay, and how do you thread that through fairly and give a real honest look at that when the contracts are all structured differently. Number of work days can be very different. If you add a couple more work days, that can change the pay drastically too, from 180, 182 work days to 185 work days. That's 3 more days that some people may look like they're getting paid higher, but they work more days. So is their average daily rate, so those are all the things that we're trying to make some good sense of for negotiations and for the board, so we can make sure we're in line to honoring our teachers for the great work they do, because they're amazing and they're in front of our kids every day, and we want to make sure that they are definitely some of the, if not the highest paid, some of the highest paid educators in the area, because we value what they do.
Steve Shrestha.
So I know this is, like you've stated, it's a high level for the board.
Yeah.
But for the learning environment and culture, I understand why we don't want to include suspension and all that data. However, at the same time, is there a way we can include how the perception is demographically? Because we want to make sure everybody feels included and welcome, and that hasn't happened.
So great question. The way we're building our survey is to link our student survey data to their demographic profile in PowerSchool. So we won't necessarily have to ask the students, we hope, like, what grade are you in? What ethnicity are you, male or female? We already have that. We already have all that. And we'll be able to do some data sorts to pull out that data through those different lenses to provide unique lenses onto what the experience is here, the lived experiences here in Okemos. Yeah.
Trustee Burns.
Sorry, I got one more.
Okay.
That's right.
So attendance, another one I
Yes.
think is really important, but I just want to acknowledge that's got to be tough
Mhm.
because it's easy for attendance to become sort of, I think, demoralizing, because we can control how we serve our students once they get into the building. Yeah, I just want to note that that could be tough as the implementation goes forward. I mean, the one thing, if I'm looking for a bright spot, or not a bright spot, but strategic anyway,
Yeah.
is if the data seem to suggest that our chronic absenteeism is driven by a small number of people who are probably missing an awful lot of days. So maybe there's some opportunities there, but I just want to acknowledge that could be tough. So appreciate conversation or things that you
And
think.
yeah, and honestly, the principals had really good, with Stacy and I and the team had really good conversations in terms of that, because some of our kids are chronically absent for good reasons, because they are chronically sick. So to say you're going to get that number to 0 probably isn't realistic. And You know, if a kid is sick, we understand that life circumstance, and we're going to try to help support them. Doesn't mean we can get it lower. We think we can get it lower. So that's why we picked the 25%. And, you know, if an elementary kid's not coming to school, it's usually not their fault. It's their parents. There's something getting in the way of them coming to school, whether it's being under-resourced or, you know, so again, how much is on the district, how much is on a parent, how much is on the student, is something we want to move, and that's tough. We had hard conversations about that. So our approach is really we want to make students want to be here. And how do we do that? With relationships, with that sense of belonging, with offering activities that are engaging, teachers that they know love them. And we don't want to blame. We want to remove those barriers when a parent is under-resourced and having trouble. We have ways to help with that. So how can we open up those lines of communication? We believe every kid wants to be successful and parents want their kids to be educated. We know there's some limits, but it doesn't mean we're not going to try our hardest.
And if I,
But yeah.
could I add
yeah,
something?
of course.
This is also an area that the Ingham ISD is focusing on across the county. So I was able, within the last month, to attend a professional development with some of our registrars and counselors and coaches, and just a really good, some administrators variety from around the district. And so we listened to a speaker from the west side of the state. And really, when you think about the chronically absent and the amount of learning that's being missed, we think 10 days and we think 10 days over a school year, you know, that's not that much. When you think each day, 6 lessons, 60 lessons, and you start building up how many days, it's very much a significant barrier of them having that learning, and it builds each year. And so it is going to be challenging, but I think that if we don't address that to get the students here, we can't teach them, they can't learn. And so it is going to be challenging, but I know that from that meeting, we felt empowered, and I'm hopeful that the county will continue having opportunities for professional learning and training and resources to give us more tools in our toolbox so that we can support all of our students.
And support our families and give our families strategies for how they can get their kids here too. The last thing we want is for people to feel blamed or stigmatized, because we know, and we've heard from families that it's intimidating to be in Okemos for some of our families. And, you know, if they think they're in trouble, they're not going to show their face, right? And it's going to be harder on their kids. So trying to set up those lines of communication and engagement, and that the kids that want to be here and parents knowing that we're here to help them find resources and here to help them problem solve and help them understand, you know, sometimes your kid pressures you to want to stay home, and you got to make that decision as a parent, but helping educate, here's the cost, you know, now the teacher's got to make up the lesson for your kid. And of course there's reasons to stay home, right? And we don't want to, you know, sick kids coming to school. And, you know, arguably sometimes we have that problem at Okemos High School, right? Kids don't want to miss because I'm going to fall behind. So we got to make sure we're thinking about that from both angles, and how can we support kids to get the breaks they need when they're not well, but make sure they're in school when they can be.
Just a Kavanaugh.
The absenteeism, that's very interesting. I feel like I had chronically absent kids sometimes in elementary school. Like we would go on a trip and then we would get hit by every stomach bug, or,
Yep.
you know, like the winter would just kill us. So I'm curious too, if there's any, do you keep track of elementary versus higher grades? And this, I don't know if you need to, but to me, it seems like you'd have more chronically absent younger kids.
So our principals keep track of by student.
Mhm.
So they have lists of by student at each level. And again, some of them are, you know, have a family that may go to India during
I
the
was
year.
going to say that was my other thing.
You know, we
Kids
do
are
have
travel.
a lot of international families and families that will take trips during the year, and it's not unusual for kids to miss 4 or 6 weeks sometimes here in Okemos. So those are the things, again, we can't control for, but again, we think we can do better than we're currently doing it. We don't know that it was reasonable to get it down to 0.
I would be interested though in if you could do it by grade level.
Yeah.
Just to see, because to me, I feel like the older kids, it would seem to me there would be a more elementary school because you are dependent on parents and all of that.
Any other questions? Okay, great. I just kind of for future planning, you mentioned
Yeah.
it briefly, but I know we have this, and trustees obviously have access to this too, kind of our, you know, planning calendar. The plan is to have a work session in October to really kind of nail all this down and give Superintendent Hood and his team marching orders going forward for this. Is that your understanding, Superintendent
Yes,
Hood?
it
We're on the
is.
same page. Okay, great. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Assistant Chairman Bailey.
Next we have the portion of the agenda where citizens can address the board. There is no one in the room. Mr. Brown, is there anyone online?
No comments online.
Okay, great. We will move on to the next one then, which is Superintendent reports and requests. Superintendent Hood.
Okay, just a couple of things because I know our meeting is running long. You'll get an Edgewood update here in October from Coordinator Alighieri in regards to our childcare enrollments and how that's looking. One of the updates she did share was that Edgewood's license returned to the normal childcare license. Remember, they were under probation. She shared last year because of a few incidents. So compliance plans have been approved for the sites and we're returned to the normal childcare licensing. So that's a tribute to the staff and leadership over there. In the consent agenda tonight, you'll hopefully approve a donation acceptance. We received an anonymous donation of $50,000, 35 of that to fund additional student clubs, some additional money to fund some research projects and some scholarships. I wanted to, first of all, again, publicly thank the donor and also let the board know that the donor is meeting the need for a club this year, but wanted to share that that will not happen next year. So for whatever that's worth and future budgeting and planning, the donor very gracious for this year, but has said that's the last year that that donor will fund clubs. So just put that feather in your cap for later. And again, thank you to that donor for stepping up and doing that. Let's see, what else do we have here? Director Karpinski is getting some feedback from parents, just letting everyone know that as a normal part of the school year, she has for transportation by law until October 3rd to make sure that all our routes are kind of balanced out for students. It allows a ridership to level off and the district to establish routes and know how many seats we need on each bus. So if you hear people complaining about some buses are overcrowded, some aren't crowded at all, she's aware, and we encourage parents to let her know what's going on there so she can level those out. Her drivers take counts and share those with her as well. But by law, and part of the process is until October 3rd. Those are fluctuate a little bit and can be solved until then. So if you're hearing from anyone talking about bus routes, please encourage them to reach out directly to Director Karpinski. So she has the data she needs from that parent perspective and not just her drivers who are amazing to level out those routes in the next week or so here. And then finally, just again, we are waiting on the state's budget. What I'm hearing today, they're still far apart in terms of roads and education and funding. We don't know what's going to happen. We sent a letter to staff to kind of let staff know we're not expecting to cut or shut down programs. We are going to ride this out and see what happens with the state's budget. I'm hopeful that if there is a shutdown, it's short-lived because I don't think it's politically great for anyone. And I want to make sure the community is aware too that my advocacy for the school district is not partisan. So, we got some feedback from folks going, John, you shouldn't send out a letter asking people to advocate for school funding. Well, if you don't have a school superintendent that's going to advocate for school funding, you don't have the right superintendent. So that's not a Republican or Democrat or independent issue. That's me saying I need to know my budget to run a school district. So please know I'm not vilifying or praising or telling anyone to vote for any particular candidate of any side. I just want to know what our budget is and be able to plan for the school year. Again, our fiscal year started July 1st. We are well over 20% of the way through our year spending without knowing what our budget is. So school just started, John. Yeah, but July 1st is when we started our budgeting. And now we're almost to October. When I sent out a letter a week ago, we were at 20% of the fiscal year being done with no budget. And that's totally unacceptable. So I appreciate anyone advocating for the schools if they share that concern and see so fit. So that on my report.
Great, thank you. Any questions for Superintendent Hood? Trustee Doxy?
Yes, just one question on the bus, the transportation. So if families have questions about, you mentioned about like the buses being overfull or not full enough. If families are not even on a bus route, would they reach out to Director Karpinski?
Yep. Yeah, they should reach out to Director Karpinski and she can share with them if they're eligible to be a rider. They have to live within, if they're within 1.5 miles of the schools, they're walkers. But she can help them understand where they fall.
Yeah,
And where the closest route would be that they could pick up a ride if they needed one.
1.5 miles. Okay, thank you.
We do not and haven't had kids have to commit. Because we know some kids might be in a sport or a club and don't use the bus part of the year, and the other part of the year they do. So we've tried to build a flexible system. So we have room for those ebbs and flows throughout the year. And we think that meets the needs of our community best, but there are some districts that make you commit and you swipe to get on. And if you swipe and aren't a rider, it buzzes and you can't get on. And then there's a whole host of issues. What do you do with leave a kid unattended at a bus stop if that happens? So we had that discussion and we feel like our approach is good and meets kind of the changing needs of families throughout a school year.
Any other questions for Superintendent Hood? Okay, great. We'll move on to board reports and requests. We're going to acknowledge receipt of correspondence. First was from Noel Barak concerning the proposed NSI schedule, Raquel Shepard regarding a phone number, and Teresa Rice Olawape regarding cell phones. Is there any committee reports out today? Trustee Shrestha?
Is this where we talk about, so the advocacy committee created who to call, how to call, and like a sample of a script, because we really want to make sure our community members, our families are able to advocate for their students and the school, because without the budget, again, like what Superintendent Hood has already said, without the budget, it really puts our school district and everybody else's school district in a big dilemma. So we shared it with everybody, all the board members. So are there any questions, suggestions?
First off, thank you. I'm sorry. Did you have something? Oh, I like it a lot. And I'm not trying to nitpick. Just a couple kind of suggestions. What do you have in the bottom part? It says including Okemos to make financial decisions and operate as usual. I thought maybe it would sound like operate effectively, because as usual might, I don't know. Some might not think that might mean different things to others, to any sort of variety of people. And then I don't know if it's possible to kind of maybe put some more Okemos colors on there, just because it was kind of more generic, but make it feel like an Okemos thing. So, but otherwise, I love it. I think it's a great idea. Did you have a comment? Yeah, Trustee Wynn.
I really loved it. So thank you for all the effort on that. My only suggestion was if we are gonna also put it like on the website, the PDF version, can we make the QR codes clickable?
Yes, we can do that. So I did both PDF and JPEG, just in case, whatever, because different websites use different ones. So we can do the clickable.
Do you have something, Trustee Doxy?
Just wanted to thank the advocacy committee for your efforts on it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Superintendent Hood?
And yes, thank you. Really deeply appreciated and working to get it up on the website. Mr. Brown would be your contact. He'll have to make sure that it meets the ADA compliance as well if it's on the website.
Thank you, Superintendent. That is an important piece, but yes, much appreciated advocacy committee. Any other committee updates? I guess I have a couple. Do you have one, Trustee Kevin? What? Floor is yours.
I was just gonna say that I was the rep at District Parent Council this week for last week for the first meeting of the year, and that was a good group, new people. So that's kind of nice, but it was a very good discussion, and it was very good of like clearing up some of the misconceptions that are out in the community right now. And it was nice to have a receptive audience. When they would hear the explanations, they said, oh yeah, that makes sense. So it was a good group, and I think everybody will be going soon in the next several months, right? So.
Trustee Shrestha.
So I attended ISOA meeting on September 3rd. That was our very first meeting. And we had speaker or a presenter from MSAB, and one of the main focus of the presentation is again asking community members, families, everybody to call, write letters, email to advocate for the budget. So that was the main topic of the conversation.
Great. One thing I did see here that I wanted to make sure board members were aware of, every year we have, this high school has a reception for the National Merit semifinalists in the library. And I believe everyone should have gotten an invitation to that. All board members are encouraged to go if you can. It's quite a great celebration. This is actually pretty rare. We're lucky in Okemos to have so many of these recipients. This is a really big honor. So I've tried to attend every year I've been on the board. It's really a great event because you hear about these amazing young people who've kind of graduated here in Okemos and gone up through our system, which is wonderful. So everyone's encouraged to come. So make sure to check your email on that. Just from the other committees that I've been involved in, I know all board members should be aware of the parade that we're marching in, so you're welcome to do that. We're going to meet beforehand on Friday. We haven't met as a committee yet, though, on community engagement. That is scheduled, I believe, Thursday. So we'll hopefully on our next board meeting have some updates for you on further engagement efforts that we're thinking about. And then as it relates to kind of board operating procedures, we did get some good feedback, so kind of some other norms to kind of, throw out into the space to kind of get some feedback on as we're kind of building some of these. And I'll just kind of go through them, the ones we got here. The one we obviously have, which I think has worked pretty good. Let others ask a question before I ask the second one. I feel like that's turned out pretty well. Others that we got, presume positive intentions. Some of these might sound obvious and of course, but I think they're worth memorializing or at least discussion. Hold space for indifference. Do not freeze others in time, including yourself, and speak from awareness of yourself and your role. So I think those are some good contributions that are worthy of some discussion as we kind of look at norms and how those can integrate into our operating procedures. Do those kind of sound like worthy of discussion for the rest of the board as we do that? Great. Wonderful. And if anyone thinks of anything else, feel free to send it over to myself, to President Buffett, as we kind of look at this and get those operating procedures ready to adopt at the end of the year. So that is all I have for board reports and requests. Anything else from any other trustees? Make sure I get everybody. Great. We now can move on to our action items. We start with our consent agenda. Can I have a motion, please?
I'm like, somebody do it. I move that the board approve items 1 through 4 for immediate implementation and appropriate action. Item 1, approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of September 8th, 2025. Item 2, approval of the minutes of the executive session meeting of September 8th, 2025. Item 3, that the board accept the generous donation from an anonymous donor to fund clubs and scholarships. And item 4, authorize the superintendent and athletic director to execute the MHSAA application to form a cooperative gymnastics team.
Moved by trustee Doxy, supported by trustee Wynn. Is there any discussion on the motion? Trustee Kavanaugh.
I did have a question on the gymnastics, and now I can't find what I'm trying to open, but it was that our gymnasts would pay Hazlitt's pay-to-play fee. What happens then if they come and play a second sport, in another season? Do they then pay ours on top of that? So they'll have you paying 2 athletic fees?
Correct.
Okay. That's a lot.
And the reason for that is, again, we were cutting programs and cutting. So if we didn't do that, this would be considered a budget add, and the board would rightfully say to me, why did you skip this ahead of all the other budget cuts we made, John? So this was a way to find a win-win for our students to try to participate. There's no Title IX issues with it. And we thought for offsetting expenses, it was a way to find a win for students that didn't have a budget impact on the district.
Great, thank you. Any other discussion? I will just quick mention thanks to whoever the anonymous donor is. I obviously have made it very clear how important clubs are to me personally. I don't want to speak on behalf of anyone else. I'm sure others feel similarly, but I really appreciate the generosity. So thank you.
I will send that feedback. So thank you.
Wonderful. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed, motion passes. The next action item is a board policy first reading. Can I have a motion, please?
That's be one of the new committee members, doesn't it? It's a new
Okay.
year.
I move that the board waive the reading and adopt the first reading of board policies 2504-0, public participation at board meetings, 31-110, data breach response, 31-15, non-discrimination, anti-harassment and non-retaliation, 31-15A definition for 31-15 series, 31-18 Title IX sexual harassment, 32-01 accounting, 32-11 post-issuance tax compliance, 32-12 post-issuance disclosure compliance, 33-01-O purchasing and procurement, 33-01A purchasing and procurement with federal funds, 33-07 construction administration, 34-02 drills, plans and reports, 34-07 asbestos management, 34-08 firearms and weapons, 41-01 non-discrimination, 41-03 whistleblower protection, 41-05B religious workplace accommodations for employees and applicants, 44-07 discipline, 51-04 age of majority, 54-01-O parent involvement in education, 54-11 student promotion, retention, and placement, 54-20 sex education, 54-21 work-based learning experience, 56-03 section 504, 57-01 abuse and neglect, 57-01-O school wellness policy, and 57-12 concussion awareness.
Moved by trustee Trista, seconded by trustee Kavanaugh. That was a long one. Is there any discussion on this motion? Yes, trustee Wynn.
So I was just going to give a reminder that all of the ones that end with O are organized. We've adjusted them from what Troon has recommended to us for some reason. And there's actually like a spreadsheet in with the packet, or in addition to the packet. And in that spreadsheet, it lists if there was an O, we tried to give a little like one sentence of why it is an O, to give you just a little bit of background. All of these were also updates from Troon from our summer recommendations. So none of these are ones that we came up with as a policy committee, just ones that we were reviewing on Troon's recommendation. Also in the summary of notes, it says if you were to only look at one thing, look at the note in pink. So I'm just going to tell you what the note in pink is. So that is 5104 age of majority. And when you look at that, it says, please review optional G and H in the policy. These are current board policies, so remove them would be a change. But Troon had sent them to us as optional. So yeah, those are the highlighted options of everything to review.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that one more time?
Yes. Okay, so 5104. G and H are in the policy are optional from Troon's point of view legally. But these are in current board policy. So removing them would be a change in policy.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, trustee Doxy.
Yes, and I just want to add, one, thank you to trustee Wynn for preparing the additional information for the full board for what the committee went through and, our notes that we lifted in terms of the change, but just to give an example, so, 25040, it was optimized. And it literally was just the first two sentences at the start of the board or the start of the policy. We previously felt, just adding a little more on the importance of the community to have that opportunity for public comment. So just wanted to give you a sense of, and sometimes it's just a minor change. I know I can't recall without going through, but it's in the notes. So it's the wellness policy.
5707.
Yes, thank you. It's my note. So we had in there that the district will eliminate lunch shaming. And I think the policy from Troon, it said may or strive to. And so just wanted to share for the full board and the community, those are like some minor tweaks that we made to the policies to reflect us as a district. So
Also in that same policy, it talks about that providing water, but in Okemos, we provide filtered water. And I did double check that did say filtered. So those are just like small examples of how we're changing policy a little bit different than what was recommended.
Thank you very much. And I did the spreadsheet was there today, right? I didn't see it okay. And forgive me, I have a couple questions and it may be answered on the spreadsheet. So feel free to say, Andy, you got to look at the spreadsheet when I ask you this. Does anyone else have any questions on these before?
Great job on having the goal.
Yes, no, that's a great idea. I agree.
We learned that one the hard way.
One additional thing in the spreadsheet, it does list the lead trustee reviewer on each one. So if you had like a particular question and you wanted to reach out before the next board meeting, you don't have to. I'm just saying, if you wanted to, you could like contact the person that was the lead reviewer. They might be the best person to answer the question on that policy.
Great, thank you. I mean, some of them are minor things like definition things. I can send them along. The one major question I had, and you said 5104, and that's funny you brought that because I had a slightly different question. We're deleting the portion where the student is allowed to represent themselves in a disciplinary conference. I was just curious why that was deleted. And you don't have to necessarily, we can look into that, but I just thought that was B.
So it's actually not being deleted. Troon, they crossed that out. So these are Troon edits. So if you look at it, they crossed it out, but then it's actually E. They just moved it down. They reordered it. It's a little confusing and it does look like it was removed, but it really wasn't. It was just reordered. And I don't know why they did that, but I don't ask the questions when legal wants to reorder it. So.
And I looked at these really quickly and I saw that and I didn't look at E. So thank you for.
Yeah, so basically all of those are the same except for G and H. They're saying we can adjust. They're saying we need to keep the other ones legally. And that G and H, we have flexibility to take out if we wanted to. Yeah, but they are.
They are in our current policy.
Our current policy.
Wonderful. Yeah, this is a lot of work. So thank you, policy committee. Any other questions? Before we move on? Okay, great. We do have an open motion, so we need to, this does not require a roll call vote. Okay, so all those in favor of this motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Ayes have it, 6-0. Wonderful. Next, we have the certification of the winter tax. Can I have a motion, please?
I move that the board certify the following winter tax rates for collection on behalf of Okemos Public Schools from Meridian Township. Layden Township, did I say that right? All right. And the city of Lansing of 9 mills, non-homestead, 3.5 mills debt, and 0.4925 sinking fund mills, And from Williamson Township of 18 mills non-homestead, 7 mills debt, and 0.985 sinking fund mills.
Moved by trustee Burns, supported by trustee Kavanaugh. Any discussion on this motion? Hearing none, this does require a roll call vote. Trustee Doxy.
Tom Buffett is absent. Jason Burns,
Yep.
Katie Kavanaugh, Andrew Phelps,
Yes.
Lenny Schrether, Jillian Wynn.
Yes.
And I am a yes.
6-0 with one absent, the motion passes. We now move on to discussion items. We do not have any further discussion items on the agenda, which just leaves us to our final opportunity for public comment. There is no one in the room. Mr. Brown, is there anyone online?
Nobody online.
Thank you very much. That moves on to any other matters prior to our adjournment into executive session. And just so those watching online, we will, after executive session, we will adjourn the meeting. There's nothing further after that on the agenda. Okay, wonderful. Then I would entertain a motion, please.
I motion that the board adjourn to executive session pursuant to section 8A in the Open Meetings Act for the purpose of discussing the superintendent evaluation.
Support.
Moved by trustee Wynn, supported by trustee Burns. This does require a roll call vote. Secretary Doxy.
Jason Burns,
Yes.
Katie Kavanaugh,
Yes.
Andrew Phelps,
Yes.
Lenny Schrether,
Yes.
Jillian Wynn,
Yes.
and I am a yes.
The motion passes 6-0. We are now in executive session. Thank you. Yeah.
I just wanted to thank Director Brian for the nutrition and food services report that we have. Thank you so much. And yes, I forwarded my questions already. Thank you.
That was our first report that we, it was the first stop, so. Yeah. See you next year.